doing out there? Welcome to another episode of Life Crusher Live, coming straight to ya every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. How you feeling out there? Good? I hope so. I hope you're all crushing it. Hey Dave, thanks for joining Psych Chrissy tonight. G'day Caitlin, aka Mind Body Bootcamp Ambassador. If you're out there watching, guys, give me a like, give me a wave, give me a thumbs up to Psych Chrissy. I love it when you guys join me live. Hey Cal. I thought I would do, I'm just continuing on the theme of, happiness blockers. You loving the rain, Dave? Oh my God, I was trying to drive the car today and literally, normally hey, good to see ya. Normally I make phone calls. Don't worry, everyone. I have all my Bluetooths and things hooked up. And literally, the person on the phone could not even hear me. It was raining that hard today on the colder freeways. So, and there was lots of aquaplaning going on. So, I hope everybody's safe out there on the roads. But, yes, the skies did open up. Hey, Court. Thanks for joining Life Crusher Live. Psych Chrissy is talking all about loneliness tonight. I'm continuing my sort of, topic campaign on happiness blockers, things that really tend to get in people's way of living sort of fulfilling and meaningful lives. I'm sure your garden's happy too, Dave. All the little flowers out there. And yeah, obviously we need the rain before it starts getting hot. The weather is really starting to kick in heat-wise, so I'm really excited for it. I love the warm weather. I don't know about you guys. I'm just ready for some, some sun, surf and sand after this, winter we've had. So, and I don't know about you guys, but who out there literally feels happier when it's sunny? Like, I know over the weekend we had some awesome sun and I literally just took a picnic blanket. I had some days off over the weekend, which makes me even more refreshed. And I was doing self-development Saturday, which meant that I was watching YouTube videos and webinars and, all the geeky Psych Chrissy stuff. And I literally just put my little, picnic blanket out on the lawn, out the back, and I sat down and I watched all my videos, and it was just really nice because the sun was out. So yeah, that was one thing I did for myself over the weekend that made me feel a bit happier. My skin looks amazing. Thank you, Cal. It's all courtesy of, as you guys know, the amazing skin therapists at Infinity Wellness. In case anybody has missed the boat, we have built the best skin clinic on this planet. So if you keep your eye on Infinity Wellness page and you want to do a little bit of work on your skin, we've got boatloads of skin programs and offers for you guys that want to get your skin all spring and summer ready. But anyway, that's a little bit off topic. Let's talk about loneliness, which I'm like, oh, well, let's just shift to a drainer. Sorry, everyone. Sorry to spoil the mood and then start to want to talk about loneliness. But I thought it was a good topic because in private practice land, I often talk to people that and loneliness is not just about not having people around you, but people can actually feel emotionally lonely. Have you ever heard of that saying, people have said before, there's so many people around me, but I feel so lonely, so it can be that emotional isolated experience. It doesn't have to be a physical isolation where you might be lacking social networks or whatever it might be, but it can be a psychological isolation. And I'm going to explain the differences between those two experiences because they can be quite different. So let's talk about the emotional isolation, and that's more about, you feeling a level of emotional disconnect, whether that might be in your relationships. Hey, Sarah. Thanks for watching Life Crusher Live tonight. We're talking about loneliness. So yeah, it can be part of that emotional isolation, that you can feel. When you do have people in your life, you might be in a relationship, you might have, friendships and things like that, but for whatever reason, you do feel a level of disconnect towards those relationships. And there's a whole range of things that can impact on that, and I will get into that. But then there can be just a social isolation where literally you just feel like people are not there, they're not present, they don't inquire, they're not interested in your life. So you actually feel a sense of physical isolation, that you just don't have those social outlets or those connections. So let's talk a little bit about emotional isolation. So that's when you've got peeps around, but you just feel like you're isolated anyway, regardless of how many friendships you have, regardless of what type of relationship you're in. You just still feel this sense of loneliness. And often that can be symptomatic of dysfunctional relationships. So if you've got social networks or you're in a relationship with a partner, sometimes a level of dysfunction, whether it be, abusive relationship dynamics or emotional abuse, feeling neglected in some way, not having your needs tended to consistently, can really start to make someone feel lonely and isolated in their relationships, because the dynamic of that relationship is not lending itself to connection. So there's a level of disconnect that's going on in that. And that can be really awful, because a lot of people that I have come in private practice will say to me, I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. I've got a relationship, I've got friends, I've got family, but why do I sit here just feeling so miserable and isolated all the time? And I will often have conversations with my clients about, well, what is the quality of those relationships like? When you engage with your partner, or when you're, having social outlets with your friends, how meaningful are those interactions? Because a lot of the time what I find is that there's a lot of superficiality going on, which means that the conversations, there's not a lot of depth to it. There's not a lot of connection. There's not a lot of understanding, so you literally just feel like you're floating around having these really mindless conversations with people. Generally, there can be feelings of being misunderstood, and your disconnection is coming from the fact that no matter what you do or what you say or how you approach things, nobody seems to get it. And unfortunately, sometimes in partnered relationships, when there's a lot of dysfunctional dynamic going on, as everyone knows, communication is probably poor at that time. There can be a lot of conflict going on. So with all of that, the further and further potentially you could feel in being disconnected from your relationship. So that leads to feelings of emotional isolation. So one of the things that, I try to do, or I try to work with my clients on, is, well, how do we improve the quality of these relationships? And it's that age-old thing where, people could have millions of friends but still feel lonely because the quality of their interactions is really superficial, all the friends but none of the value. So it's a really tricky one. Hey Tony, thanks for joining all the way from New Zealand. Awesome to see people from overseas coming to learn a bit of content for Life Crusher Live, and we're talking about loneliness tonight. So one of the things I try to do with my clients is really encourage them to appraise the quality of their interactions with others. So, when they're having conversations with their partner or their friends or their family, what depth do you go into? Are they meaningful? Are you discussing shared experiences? Are you talking about stuff that's really important to you? Or are you talking about the fact that you just mowed the lawn on the weekend? Like what? Or are you talking about reality TV? Or, because those would be types of superficial conversations that you would be having with people, versus if you're having meaningful, well-connected conversations, that would be about, talking about values and things that are important, and emotions. Emotional exchanges are really, really important to combat emotional isolation, because when you share emotions with other humans, there's a bond and there's a connection that forms that is quite unlike any other, you know. So the sharing of emotions is really, really important for relationship health, and it helps us connect and bond with other people. So then we do feel fulfilled in those interactions when we're having emotional transactions or exchanges. So that's really, really important. So anytime I have someone sort of saying to me, oh, there's all these people around, but I just don't feel connected to anybody, time and time again, I can guarantee that it's about the quality of the interaction and the lack of emotional exchange that might be going on as a reason why there seems to be a level of disconnect in those relationships. The other thing, I suppose the other area that I want to have a look at is more about actual social isolation, that for whatever reason you just don't have the networks around you to connect with. You're lacking in opportunity to have those meaningful interactions with others. So this is what we would typically call social isolation, you know, rather than psychological or emotional isolation. And that literally, it's a real tricky one because I often get clients in private practice and they'll complain a lot about not having friends, not having anybody to go and have a coffee with and all of that sort of stuff. But more often than not, they're really reluctant to even reach out or make those efforts or get a start on trying to make those connections. So unfortunately, you know, a lot of the time what happens with social isolation, it's just this perpetuated cycle, you know, and I'll get some pretty righteous people going, well, you know, my friends never ring me and I never get invited anywhere and this is bullshit and, you know, no one even cares. And, you know, and then when we brainstorm strategies and I say to them, okay, so when was the last time you called up Joe Bloggs and invited her out for a coffee? Well, I'm not calling Joe Bloggs because she doesn't call me, and it becomes this bloody vicious cycle, you know. And then all we do is we come back to the fact that I'm lonely, no one cares about me, it's not fair, no one rings me, but I'm not bloody ringing anyone either, you know. So we come to I suppose a compromise about, okay, so if you're not going to throw your hands in the air and throw out the invitations and be a bit more active on that, what do we need to do? You know, what do we need to do? If it's not inviting, you know, Jenny out for a coffee, can we invite Susie? Or, you know, is she easier to invite? But it is about trying to encourage and motivate somebody that's socially isolated to take control of that. Invitations, you know, for someone that is socially isolated, there's probably been a prolonged period of time where that disconnect in the relationships has formed, which means it gets probably less and less likely that invitations are just going to fall in your lap. You know, people get busy, they get distracted. As humans, we often tend to the shiny lights, you know, so the things that are most prominent, or the, you know, the people that make the most contact, or the people that throw out the most invitations generally get our attention. So, you know, unfortunately for somebody that's spent periods of time in prolonged social isolation, sometimes it makes them really hard to reach out. Amanda, sitting on the front table at Rocket and someone will talk to you. Have you been spying on me? I'm often down at Rocket. Hey, everyone at Rocket, if you're watching, I'm a regular down there. They make really good coffee. Not a bad drop of wine down there either. And I do get down there for a bit of a lunch or a breakfast from time to time, and I do make friends. Sometimes I even see Amanda there. But yeah, the other thing, but she actually makes a good point. That, you know, when you maybe don't have the social networks, there are potentially steps that you need to take to put yourself out there a little bit. And if that means sitting at a table, you know, having coffee or having breakfast on your own, which I absolutely have no problem with at all. And I know there'll be some people out there going, oh my God, I would never eat on my own. I do it all the time. And, you know, when there's other people sort of sitting around that are doing the same thing, you are inclined to chat and have conversations with people. So So I suppose the take-home message for people that are socially isolated is that somewhere along the line, you are going to have to take a step towards connection, you know, and whether that might be that you join social networks or you have hobbies that you're interested in and you go and position yourself in a club or an outlet or in any sort of interest, so that you put yourself in a position where you are open and you are able to access those social networks. And even for those that have had the social networks, but for whatever has happened over time, they've seemingly eroded away, you are going to have to take control of throwing out some of the invitations or making some of the phone calls or touching base with people. Because like I said, the longer the disconnection has been, the more unlikely it can be that people come and send those invitations your way. So I often try and motivate people to take those first steps towards being in control of their own happiness. You know, if you're feeling lonely, the only person that can change that is you. Okay, don't leave that in control of or in other people's hands and sit there waiting for the invitations that never come. One of the things too that can be important, that if you've got significant events like birthdays or anniversaries or certain things that are, you know, happening in your life, and you want to do something meaningful for it, take the action. Go out and invite people, plan events, you know, plan the get-togethers. And again, I think it's really tricky because sometimes I get these, you know, really sort of resentful feedback, you know, from my clients. It's like, why do I have to be the person to, you know, create all the events? And, you know, and I'm like, because you're the one that's freaking lonely. It's not rocket science. Look, I don't do that. But in essence, I kind of do. You know, I do kind of say, well, you know, it's your emotion. You need to own it. And if you want to change that, you've really got to do something about it. You've got to take control of it. You know, so it's really important that if you're feeling isolated or you're feeling lonely in any shape or form, whether it be psychological, which is the emotional isolation, people around me, but I just feel disconnected, or whether it's the social isolation where there are no people around, they've been and gone, and you don't seem to have the opportunities for connection. The take-home message from Psych Chrissy tonight is you need to be the boss of that. You need to take control. You need to find the opportunities for connection. You need to create your own connective experiences. You need to share more. You need to put yourself out there more. You need to provide the invitations. And then more often than not, what will happen is when you start making those efforts, what you will see is probably reciprocation. You will find that that will start to come back to you. You will start to receive the invitations again. You will start to become more connected and have more meaningful interactions as a result of you putting some things out there on the table. So there we go, guys. I hope that you guys have got some tips and tricks for managing your loneliness. And don't get me wrong, loneliness, I think, is something that all humans experience from time to time at different periods in their life for whatever's going on, whatever their situation might be. So it's not even an unusual occurrence, but there are certain little tips and tricks and actions that you can take to try and help shift that experience to make yourself feel more connected and feel like you have more quality relationships with others. So there we go, guys. Before I head off, I've just got a quick reminder on the post. We are kicking off our Mind Body Bootcamp next week. So if you want to come and change your life with Psych Chrissy, please click the link. We've also got the program available online. So for people watching me in New Zealand and Sydney and everywhere else that you're watching me from, there's no need to despair. You do not have to be in Melbourne to do the Mind Body Bootcamp. You can actually do it online and work with myself and Coach Mel on getting yourself that healthy lifestyle. So get in touch, guys. Click the link. We're kicking off Monday and I'm really pumped to start changing some more lives and getting some more people motivated. So there we go. Enjoy your night, everyone, and I will catch you next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Enjoy.